I'm very driven by freedom. I'm driven by financial freedom, but I'm also driven by time freedom. And so anything I'm spending my time on that I think I could teach someone else to do, well, I should probably teach someone else to do it. When you become the CEO, things start to change. Your income is no longer limited.
This is your Real Estate Syndication Show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is John Jonas. He's a founder of OnlineJobs.ph, and he had a former job for 8 months after college and quickly met his goal to quit that job and work from home for himself, and has made 6-7 figures since then. He hired his first Filipino 2 years later in 2006 and knew he was onto something special. This was an extraordinary relationship structure with great potential, and it still remains to this day. So he's the author of The Outsourcing Lever and a creator of OneVAAway.com. He's a Christian husband, father. You're going to hear many things today about his background, but what you are going to learn today is how to outsource so many things and ultimately gain time back by hiring people who are specialists in the things that you need. John, welcome to the show. Honored to have you on. I've actually been using your services for a while now, your website that you've created, and I'm looking forward to diving in so the listeners, whether they are passive investors or whether they're active, I'm positive that they can gain a lot by learning about what you do in this website, and ultimately people that can help them in ways that I bet they've not thought of. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Before we jump in, tell us what OnlineJobs.ph is, and then we'll jump into a little bit of your backstory and really how the listeners can utilize this to help themselves.
So Online Jobs is a job board for finding virtual workers in the Philippines. So it's kind of like Indeed.com, but just for the Philippines. So about 48% of our customers are in the US, and then they're, in the UK and Canada and Australia and France and South Africa and Brazil and whatever employers around the world looking to hire a virtual person, virtual help. So a copywriter, a social media marketer, a content writer, SEO, a programmer, data entry, just an assistant, whatever, all of these, any of this stuff. You can find someone in the Philippines, and they're super good at the work that they do. They are talented, they're honest. So it's a way to connect. It's just a job board. You post a job, and the people in the Philippines will apply to the job, and then you hire who you want. And we don't act as a middleman. We don't take a cut of their salary. We don't mark up salaries. You just pay them. And I wanted to find in the Philippines for hiring people, and so that's what I made. That's what I made for myself initially, and then now it's available to everyone.
Oh, awesome. Well, I want us to get into that and the website and the types of tasks that most likely can be found, that you can help with that often the listener hasn't thought of. Before we do that, I want to back up just a little bit in your story. What was the pivotal moment for you, John, that, said, I realize there's like potential here with outsourcing specifically, not so much building the website yet, but like there's potential to outsource some of these things that I'm doing. And here's a good way or a good, even place in the Philippines to get this help.
That moment happened multiple times. So the first time it happened, I had tried hiring someone multiple different ways. I tried hiring local people, and it just didn't work out. And I tried that 4 times. And it was also like, I was new, and that help was expensive, and it was just questionable. It was like right on the edge of, is this worth it or not, right? And when they quit, that just made it so rough. I tried hiring people in India. That was really rough, and I won't go into it, but it's just harder. I tried hiring people off of Upwork. It was actually Elance at the time. Now it's Upwork, and I thought that was it. Like I found this is amazing, only to realize later that no, this is purposefully temporary, short-term work. They talk about you can make it long-term, but that's not how the incentive system of Upwork works. The incentive system is to do short-term work. And that it was really hard for me because as a small business owner, that just guaranteed 100% turnover. And that was like, oh man, I got some really good advice from someone who told me, when you're ready to start hiring for some of the stuff you're doing, make sure you go to the Philippines with it. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. I'd never considered that. And he gave me a reference to where I could hire someone, and I didn't do it because the reference was a full-time person. It was through an agency. I was going to pay them $750 a month, and they were going to give me a full-time person, and I had to keep someone busy full-time. And I didn't think they could do enough. I didn't think they could do good work. I didn't know if I could keep them busy full-time. I don't know I could afford it. This is 2004. It took me a couple of months, and finally I was like, it doesn't really matter. I have to take the leap. And I hired this guy, and it was the single most liberating experience of my life. His full-time job was to do anything I asked him to do. And he really didn't know anything. I mean, now it's super easy to hire someone who's super talented, but at the time it was really, really difficult. And so he didn't really know anything. I just had to teach him everything, but anything I was willing to teach him, he was willing to do. And he was willing to do it full time, or do it for a few hours and do something else, which is what ended up happening. And so the first time this life-changing moment happened for me, I had taught him how to write articles and how to post them on websites and how to get links on those websites to my websites for SEO. This is what I was doing at the time. And I had tried doing this elsewhere. I tried doing this. This is what I tried doing on Elance, and it just didn't work. And the first time he did it correctly, it was like, oh my gosh, there are two of me now, which is, he's doing what I was previously trying to do, and I just hated my life for doing it because I hate doing it. And he's doing it, and he's happy to do it. And maybe he likes it or not. I don't know, but he's doing it. That was really the first life changer. Was, yeah, I just replaced myself for the first time ever. And I did it again and again and again, and like 3 times with him in different things that I was trying to do. And then I hired someone else and was like, oh yeah, I can get someone else to do the things that I'm struggling to do or that I'm doing, so I can focus on more important things. So I'm not focusing on $8 an hour tasks, so I can focus on high-level tasks.
Speak to even what you just said, because I think it's very difficult for a lot of us to figure out, hey, what am I doing that somebody else could do? How did you determine the $8 task versus $100 or $1,000 hour task, right? That really took John to do versus being able to give it to somebody else.
So I have kind of a different perspective on this. I'm very driven by freedom. I'm driven by financial freedom, but I'm also driven by time freedom. There definitely are $1,000 an hour tasks, and there are $8 an hour tasks, but really there's just time. And so anything I'm spending my time on that I think I could teach someone else to do, well, I should probably teach someone else to do it. Because maybe they don't do it exactly how I would do it, and maybe they don't do it exactly as well as I would do it, but it's all about time. And if I'm not doing it and it's still getting done, well, 90% is 90% in my experience is almost just as good as 100% in almost every case, right? So if they're doing it at 90% of what I would do it.
And you didn't have to do it. That's amazing.
It's such a big deal. And so for me, I started off by hiring someone to do the article writing thing that I was doing, right? This was marketing. And then I taught him SEO. And so he's doing SEO stuff that I was doing. And then he's doing ads, like Google ads that I had been doing. And so I taught all these things. And there's ways of teaching people these things now, and you can also hire individual people to do each of these things, whatever. The big one was when I graduated from College of Computer Science, and I was a programmer, and I hired a programmer at some point. And that was really life-changing, because that was my thing, right? That was, no, I'm the really good programmer. It turned out the programmer I hired was better than me. And that was the end of it. Like, that, I was no longer a programmer. I was kind of the CEO. And what a transition that was for me, where I'm a programmer. I guess I have to figure out how to be a CEO. Like, a programmer's income is very limited. In almost every profession, the income is limited. There's a cap. But when you become the CEO, things start to change. Your income is no longer limited.
Yeah, it's no longer limited. Love that thought process there. And I guess before we jump on in, because there's so many things around this process that I want to open the eyes of the listener to. But before we do that, give us just some of maybe the unconventional, say, tasks, the things that you're able to hand off to somebody like this that maybe aren't thought of often. Oftentimes we think of maybe some of the social media stuff or email or calendars, organization, things like that. But what are some other things that are maybe are often not discussed that you found personally or with other people that, they've just really moved the needle for them personally by handing these things off as well?
Let me define something in this, because this should change. This should help people understand these tasks. We call them virtual assistants. And so we think of an executive assistant, we think of a personal assistant, we think of an assistant, right? An assistant is a secretary, and they can only do data entry. At least that's what most people think of when they hear virtual assistant, right? Oh, they can only do data entry. Oh, they can only do basic menial tasks. They can only follow exact instructions. And that's not who I hire, and that's not who you want to hire. And so years ago, I stopped calling them virtual assistants because that's not what it is. And I'm hiring these specialists who are really, really good at all kinds of different things. And I'm gonna talk about that to answer your question. So rather than calling them virtual assistants, I call them online Filipino specialists. They work online. They're in the Philippines, and we can talk about why the Philippines specifically. And they're specialists. So like specialists at SEO, I recently hired multiple SEO specialists, or social media specialists, or programmers who are really, really good, or a system admin who manages the servers and the security of what we're doing, or someone who specializes, who's really, really good at making Google Docs spreadsheets, right? Like really, really good at putting data together in these spreadsheets. That's not a data entry person, right? Or someone who is really knowledgeable at researching real estate deals, or like following through with contractors, or someone who can do bookkeeping, someone who's really experienced with Xero or QuickBooks, and they're following the invoices and they're following up with people, and they're like, you can find specialists who are really good at all these things. You can also find a general virtual assistant and who knows multiple of these things, and you can teach others, right? Some of the things that you wouldn't think about. So I had a guy contact me one time. He said he had gotten a part-time job knowing that he wasn't going to do the job. He was just going to hire someone in the Philippines to do the job, right? So he's working in the US and just sending all the work to the Philippines. I have a friend who contacts me one day and says, John, I just hired this guy. Actually, it wasn't just. He had hired this guy a couple months before in the Philippines from my website. And he says he's an investment banking analyst. So this guy's a $250,000 a year person in the US. This is 10 years ago. $250,000 a year person in the US that he's paying $1,500 a month for in the Philippines, right? Crazy. And he's like, this guy is so good. He knows what he's doing. You can find bankers. You can find... So email, you talked about email being like the one you assume is like, okay. But I have someone respond to my email as if they're me. So, and that took some time to go through, but they respond like me in my personal email, which so many people are like, oh, I don't know if I could trust someone to do that. Yeah, you don't know if you could trust someone to do it. You have to try it first and see, do I trust this person? And it's pretty easy to figure out in the Philippines how quickly you do or do not trust them. So people will typically think about like cold calling. You want to have someone doing cold calling outreach, super doable, or lead generation is super doable. You're going to teach someone, hey, go on LinkedIn and look for this kind of person and contact them. And then the response from that person is going to come straight to you rather than going to the person in the Philippines, right? So then they're doing the initial legwork, and you have these leads that are coming to you, right?
Yeah, no, it's some great thoughts. I just trying to help the listener to think through this. I mean, we've hired, I mean, probably, I don't know, about just through OnlineJobs.ph, I don't know, 20 or 30 different OFSs, over the last number of years. But for us personally, it's been mostly marketing, podcast editing, video, audio editing, copywriting, even all the posting. I had a manager, of all that at one time as well. And yeah, they're very hardworking, very dependable. There's been very few where I was like, I don't think you're probably a good fit. I mean, and for the most part, I mean, they did seem very trustworthy up front. And so, I would imagine that would you say the marketing piece is more of the common hire, or are there other, what have you seen?
It's all over the board. So I talk about the marketing piece because so many people are interested in that. We have a bunch of admin people, not like secretarial admin, but data admin or customer support or back end management of things. I know, so I have like multiple neighbors around me now that I talk about. So one guy, he buys pallet auctions, their surplus things or their lost mail items, and all he does is take pictures of these things, and then he hired someone in the Philippines off my website, and she looks them up and makes the listing on eBay and Poshmark and wherever else, so that those things get sold. She manages the sales of them, and she prepares the shipping of it all. She does all of it. All he does is take pictures of these things that he buys, right? And then she does all the rest, and then one of his kids ships it when she sends them a label, right? The things you can do, it's like anything that can be done online or on a computer, you can have someone in the Philippines to do it. And you can hire someone who's good at it, or you can teach someone to do it, right? And then they're going to do it your way, or both. You hire someone who's good at it and you teach them.
Yeah, I would say the 95, maybe all but one or two of the hires that I made all had a skill that I didn't have, right? Like, I mean, that's why we needed them, right? I mean, and then some others, that I did teach them skills, things I wanted them to do. But let's talk about the hiring process a little bit. Would love your just thoughts on, just key things to look at, right? Or maybe questions to ask. And obviously, we're in another country, another time zone, those things. But what are some things that you need to make sure you're asking these questions to get, the right hire?
I'm going to give a quick overview of how I hire. I cover this in detail at onevaoa.com. I hire great people, and this is my process for, I've hired probably 50 people. I have 40 that work for me because I very rarely let someone go. Here's what I do. So my first thing is I will go to OnlineJobs.ph and I search the skill I'm looking for. You're looking for a real estate investor, right? So you're going to search real estate investing or investor. Search it and see what comes up. You're going to look at profiles, and the goal here is two things: to see what skills exist, and then the second thing is to see how much are people looking to make. So you're going to look at 10 or 20 of them, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, wow, I can hire some really talented people. I want to hire that person. I want to hire that person. I want to hire that person. And that's the wrong way to go about it. So saying, oh no, that's the person I'm going to hire, because online jobs it's a profile. It's kind of like you putting your profile onto Indeed.com as an employee, right? That person may already have a job. And one of the great things about the Philippines is they're so loyal that if they already have a job, chances of them responding to your inquiry is not great, because they're loyal to their employer, which is great once you've hired someone, right? So I'm going to look at things, and then at that point, I'm going to go post a job. And when I post a job, actually, so I have two things going on here. I'm posting a job and people are going to apply. However, the more specialized I find the job is, like the more specialized the skills are, the less I can rely on a job post. And so I will post a job, but if it's a really specialized thing, I'm looking for a really high-end person, the more I find I have to actively contact people. So I have to go on OnlineJobs.ph. You have to upgrade to do this. And you're searching profiles, and I'm just going to use the contact button on people's profiles and say, hey, I'm looking for someone to do this. Are you interested? Because again, if they already have a job, they may not respond to you, or they may not be interested, or whatever it is. So I'm going to contact 10 people, 10, maybe 20 people, whatever. And then I'm going to wait and see who responds, who applies to my job post, and who responds to my inquiry. At this point, so you have a bunch of leads of people you can hire. Now I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions across a bunch of emails. There's not something specific that you need to ask. I have a list of questions to ask that's available for free at Online Jobs or at OneVAOA. And that list there's like 100 questions that you can ask. I don't really care what you ask. The point here is to ask a lot of questions across a bunch of emails. So I'll send an email with 2, 3, 4 questions. And when they respond, I'll send another email with 2, 3, 4 questions. And I'll do this over and over and over again. And the point here is, if I send them 4 questions and they only answer 3 of them, I know their attention to detail isn't great. To be in a virtual relationship, it doesn't really work in most positions. If I send them an email and they take 3 days to respond, then I know that once I hire them, they're probably going to take 3 days to respond to me. And that really doesn't work in a virtual relationship where like, oh, I have no idea if you're actually working or not, right? So this process tells you, gives you a really good indication of how they're going to work virtually with you. A couple things. Let me go back, take a step back. When I post my job, I usually do 2 things. I usually require them to make the subject of their application or the title of their application a specific thing. So it'll be like real estate investing dash your name here, right? I'll put that in my job description. I want you to apply with real estate investing dash your name. And then the second thing, and this is something recently that I've started doing, is I require people to use a certain number of apply points. So apply points, you can figure this out on OnlineJobs. I mean, we'll explain this, but require people to use a specific number of apply points, somewhere between 3 and 10. You'll usually get a whole bunch of applications that are not relevant. There are people that are just spam applying to job posts because they can, and you don't want to see those. So people that are spam applying to job posts, they only get allotted 10 apply points per day. And so if they want to apply to 10 jobs, they have to use 1 apply point for each of those 10. Or if they only apply to 1 job that day, they could use 10 apply points on that job. And that tells you, it's a general indication of how serious they are in applying to that job. The more apply points they have to use, or the more apply points they use, the more serious they are typically. And they can accumulate up to like 50 apply points at a time. So I use the apply points as a way to weed out unqualified people. If you apply to my job with 1 apply point, well, I'm just not even going to look at I'm not even going to look because I know you're not serious. So there's another tip in writing your job post. That'll be really helpful. So at this point, you've started to interview people by email. I'm sending them emails. I'm asking questions. I do not go do a video interview. This is the thing that most people want to do. They jump straight to a video interview, and that's a problem in the Philippines. There's a bunch of reasons why. I'm not going to get into it, but if you're going to do a video interview, that's the very last thing you're going to do once you've already narrowed this down. Lazy people don't want to go through this process.
They're not serious about your position.
Yeah, so lazy people don't want to go through this. And so they'll just stop responding to you. You'll find people that as they respond to you, you're like, oh yeah, this isn't right. So you'll stop responding to them. And it's really easy to filter people out like this. As you start filtering, you'll get an idea like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work, or oh yeah, I don't like getting an email from this person. I don't like the way this communication is happening. I'm just going to not respond to this person. Or I'm going to tell them I decided to go a different direction. And you'll find some people you're really excited to talk to them. And that's really awesome. So pursue that. You'll narrow it down. It's pretty easy to narrow down to 2, 3, 5 people. At this point, if you want to do an interview, great. If you want to do a test task, that's a great thing to do. If it's going to take someone longer than about 20 minutes, you should offer to pay for this. People in the Philippines are very scared about doing work and not getting paid. They're very scared about getting scammed. So you're scared about getting scammed. They're more scared than you about getting scammed, about doing a bunch of work and not getting paid. Which that also brings me to trust. And when you start doing this test, you're going to have someone doing something that is, it's not in your business, but it's, something related to your business. You go into this thinking, I don't know if I can trust this person. Right? They go into this thinking, I don't know if I can trust this person. But their feeling of distrust is stronger than your feeling of distrust. So like you have a feeling of scam, they have their feeling of not getting scammed is stronger than yours. Their feeling of not trusting you is stronger than your feeling of not trusting them. So if you want someone to be really great, you have to do things to gain their trust. And that starts in this interview process, which is one of the reasons why we don't do the video interview up front, because it does not breed trust with them. You're starting to gain their trust in the interview process. You're communicating with them. They're starting to see, oh yeah, this is a real person. This guy is not going to scam me. If you're going to have them do a test, you're going to pay them for that. You might pay them $10 for that test task. This isn't a lot, right? And some people might say, no, I need $20 to do this. Okay, fine. I'll pay you $20, whatever, right? At this point, you have a really good idea of who you're going to hire. And now it's time to decide on one of them. Like say, hey, I'm ready to hire you, and here's the terms. I want to hire you full time. I want to hire you part time. I want to hire you hourly. Whatever it is, I want to pay you this much. You'll get a good idea because you've already looked at profiles. You can look at their profile and see how much they're asking to make. You can negotiate salaries. When can you start? Oh, I can start tomorrow. Oh, it's today is Thursday. How about I start Monday? Great, sweet. What's my first task? Now you're going to send them an email with their first task, right? Or some people want to get on a video call with them and give them their first task. Fine, whatever. You'll find that if you record things, that's a lot better. That allows them to watch it multiple times to make sure things are going right. Here's a really big tip. When I hire someone, the first thing I tell them is, here's your first task. I know you're going to get stuck on this task. I know you're going to have a problem with it. What I do not want you to do is to disappear, because that's the worst thing you can do, is disappear. When you get stuck on something, I want you to try and figure this out. I want you to see, use your brain. You're smart. I've hired you because you're smart. Try and ask a friend if they know something, search the internet, whatever. When you don't feel like you're making progress, then you contact me, and I'm going to help you through this. And I expect this to happen. I expect you to get stuck, because here's the real thing in the Philippines. They don't want to let you down. They don't want to disappoint you. If you've given them instructions in their culture, it's their job to understand. Or in our culture, it's our job to explain. If someone didn't understand, that's our fault. That we didn't explain it right. In their culture, if they don't understand, that's their fault. And so they're hesitant to come to you and say, hey, I don't understand. So you have to make it very clear when they get stuck, when they don't understand, they need to come to you. That's what you expect of them. And if you'll do that, you'll solve like 90% of the problems you have with people, especially in the beginning. So again, I cover this in more detail at 1VAOA.
That's very helpful, though, just to know enough about their expectations and their fear coming into this relationship as well, that it's not just, the fear that I have, right? I mean, so self-centered, really. But I feel like in a way too, they almost have more, they're putting more risk out there than we are in this relationship too, right? I mean, just more times than not, right?
Wait, I mean, like you're giving someone access to your business, but they're giving you control over their life. Like in the Philippines, there's no recourse if you don't have money. There, you don't eat. There is no go to the food pantry and get food. There's no government assistance in the Philippines. If they don't have food, if they don't have money, they don't eat. And if they do a bunch of work and you don't pay them, well, then they're just screwed. Like their kids aren't going to eat for a few days, So they're putting a lot of risk in you. And what you'll find is in the Philippines, so your fears of them stealing from you or whatever is like, they're more trustworthy than people in the US.
Let's move a little bit to, okay, now we found somebody. Talk through the hourly versus, say, part-time, full-time, but even the, paying them hourly versus task-based. Just help us think through how we should do that.
So you can do whatever you want. And in online jobs, you can do whatever you want. We recommend hiring full-time or hiring part-time, hiring on a salary. Part-time work is always associated with temporary work. If you hire them part-time, they assume this is going to end, because there's so much of this in the Philippines. This is going to end in 6 weeks, 6 months. I get asked by people in the Philippines, when does this contract end? Like, what's the end date? What do you mean? Like, there's no end date. Well, there's an end date, right? No, I want this to work forever. Like, I want you to work for me. So the Philippines culture expects an end date when something is part-time. So if they're working part-time, that means they're going to be working full-time somewhere else. At least they're very likely to be looking for full-time work somewhere else. So if you get someone full-time and take care of them, then their focus will be on you, and they want to help you succeed because they want to keep their job. They want your business to succeed. So that's a really big deal. Now, I do have people on my team that work for me hourly because they want to work hourly. I don't know why. Usually they work full-time hourly, but we pay them based off of the number of hours that they work. I don't track their hours. I just tell them to track it. They can track it however they want. We have time tracking software. If you want to use time tracking software, I don't use it because I don't like it. So the per project thing is fine. If you want to hire someone per project, that's totally fine. You can do that. Just whatever you work out with the people in the Philippines. Just be aware that in my experience, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now. Most per project stuff prevents small business owners from growing their businesses. I mean, I get that it seems really awesome to have something that is low commitment and you don't, if they're not busy, you don't have to worry about it. But that's the exact thing that keeps you in bondage to your business, that prevents you from being the CEO, where you're not concerned. Oh, if they're not busy, then I don't really care. That's not my problem. I can focus on my emails still. I can spend my silly time on email. Whereas if that person works full time for you, you're responsible for their hours. Well, now you have to step away from whatever is consuming your time all the time, and you have to work on your business and give them instructions, give them things to do, and think about how can we grow the business through them rather than just focusing in your business all the time. That was the biggest transition thing for me, was hiring someone full time. And that forced me to become more CEO-like rather than grunt worker-like.
Yeah, it's changing your mentality towards it as well.
There's this element of like, oh, how should I handle them? But there's an element that we don't think about of, this is going to change me and my ability to run my business. Like, you take a leap here and you hire someone full time, and yep, it's going to cost you $600 a month for a full-time person, or maybe $800 a month, right? Full time. That's going to change you. It's less about them. It matters for them.
You mentioned, say, a tracking software and things like that. I know a concern for listeners. I've heard this for years as well. It's like, well, how do I know they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? Or I'm paying them, this full-time salary like you talked about. How do we know they're actually doing it? Speak through that a little bit, and those concerns, or accountability and ensuring performance, things like that.
In my life, I typically do things differently than everybody else does, and it has served me really, really well. One of the things that I do differently is I hire people to do the things that I'm doing. I want the time freedom, because the time freedom lets me be really, really effective at the things that I spend my time on, because my brain is not focused on other things, right? And so I hire people to do things that I know how to do. And so, at least in the beginning. So when they're working, I have a really good idea of how long this thing takes. I know if they're productive or not. And after they've worked for me for a couple of weeks, I know, oh yeah, this should be taking you this long. Why are you doing less and less? What's going on? And I'll say something. Well, your productivity's down. What's going on? And usually that lets them know, yeah, I am paying attention, because it is a virtual relationship and you're not seeing them, right? But the other side of it is, this is $4 an hour. Like, is it really worth worrying about? Like, focus on what makes you money rather than on those extra $70 in the month where you could have made $100,000. You focus on 70. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to be getting ripped off. You don't want to be getting hosed. So if you want to track time, that's fine. It's really intrusive. Like, if you want someone to turn on a time tracker, that's fine. Go for it. That's what we have at OnlineJobs. OnlineJobs.ph/timeproof. It takes screenshots of their desktop, and I hate it. And they hate it. And it's just not a great way of building their trust in you. And that's it. I mean, all of my people work, we pay them a salary, they do their jobs. We have a good idea if they're showing up or not, right? Like, did the work get done or not? If they're not responding every day, then I have a pretty good idea that something's wrong.
Speak to that meeting cadence and follow up, and how you stay just in touch with them. And, and I'm sure it's depending on what they're doing for you, right? But walk through that a little bit.
So I want a daily report from them. I want to report every day. And the way that I work, me personally, is I don't want to think about what other people are doing. I want to be effective at what I'm doing. And if I'm constantly thinking about what they're doing, well, that's, a little bit more of my brain's bandwidth away from what I should be working on. So I give them instructions, I give them training, I give them feedback, whatever. And then I send it, when I send that to them, I leave it alone. It goes away from my head. And I require them to send me a daily email. And actually, it was a daily email in the beginning. Now we use a project management system. They post in the project management system what they're doing. And in that, I ask for 3 things. Number 1, what did you do today? And that's like pretty much, that's all of it, right? And I know if they don't tell me what they did today, well, maybe they didn't do something today. Or maybe there's a problem. And so the problem of them disappearing, if they're not responding to me, if they're not giving me a daily report, that tells me something is wrong. And I probably need to go approach them and say, hey, what's wrong? You're not sending me a daily report. The second thing is, what problems did you run into? Which I don't often get an answer to that question. And the third thing is, what can I help you with? And I get an answer to that one even less. But just having those 3 things, what did you do today? What problems did you run into? What can I do to help you? Lets them know, okay, I can come to him for help when I get stuck on something. This solves, I mean, the disappearing problem is the number 1 problem that people have. And this helps solve it. So, and that, again, it's daily. For me, that daily piece is really important.
Real quick, and we'll move on, but how do you manage all that feedback, from what did you say, 30 people? Oh, what is that?
Look, I hired my team 1 person at a time. I don't ever remember, until very recently, I don't ever remember hiring 2 people at once. And hiring 2 people at once, I had people managing that process. So it was 1 person at a time, and I can manage 1 person. And then I started getting, you just to get these reports, and it's like, oh yeah, you did your work. Sweet. That just took me 20 seconds of management. Great job. That's all I did. I sent them back, great job, right? Or maybe I spent 5 minutes giving more training or more feedback or whatever. And that's my interaction with them for the day. And so if I have 20 people at 5 minutes each, well, there's a couple hours of work. But that's all I'm doing. In my business, that's all I'm doing is just managing people because I don't have anything left that is my responsibility, right? I've given it all to people.
What's an average pay for the listener that's never heard of this before? What should you expect to pay somebody, in the Philippines? And what's fair, right? And to give you an example, one of the first people I hired in the Philippines, I remember her, she was a school teacher there and she was making $3 an hour, right? And I think, right off the bat, I was paying her $6. Before, she grew, right? And we were paying her more than that. And so it was, think about, if you could just double somebody's income immediately, just the lifestyle difference, right? But, I guess give some context. You're a lot more experienced than I am. And what should somebody expect to pay for different skill sets and what's fair, right? So in a sense, I felt like I was almost taking advantage of them, but just wondered your thoughts.
So the most common salary request I see is $5 an hour. $5 an hour in the Philippines for most people is pretty good. It's life-changing. You want to hire someone who's really talented, someone who's going to run Facebook ads for you, it's going to cost more. It's going to be $10 an hour. You can hire new people. You can still hire new people at $3 an hour. I recently saw multiple people. In fact, I had my son is serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Philippines, which is so crazy to have him be there. And he's sending me these people. He's like, Dad, this guy needs a job. He's amazing. I love this person and I trust him completely. Like, okay, cool. And I'll talk to him. How much do you want to make? If I can make $300 a month, that would be so awesome. Right? That's like, if I could make $300 a month, that would be amazing. Right? Well, $300 a month is still very poverty, but their option is $0, right? They're eating rice 1 time a day in some cases. Now, that's not a fair wage, right? Where I would say a fair wage for a full-time person should be $450 a month for a beginner. You want someone who's fluent in English, you're going to pay $600, $700, $800 a month. And they're going to do really good stuff for you. You want a programmer, they're going to be $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500 a month for full-time work. So, you're looking between, $350 is on the low end. $5 is kind of low average. 10, 11, 12, $15 is high end.
And that made me think of something else. It's like, okay, as you're thinking about 350 to 1200, 15, or whatever it may be, or on the very high end, are we, or should we, I was trying to think through the level of skill that we should expect. And are they, you talked about like Facebook ads, for example, and I would expect, or can we expect to find somebody there that's as talented in Facebook ads as we can find somebody in the States? Because I know that's just what the listeners are thinking.
I will give you two things. So Facebook ads specifically, right? So I had someone run my Facebook ads in the Philippines for a lot of years. And the problem with Facebook ads for me is I don't know anything about it. So I have no clue what we're doing, right? I have no clue what she's doing. So then I have someone in the US approach me. He's like, hey, I can do your Facebook ads better. Okay. And he says, it's going to cost you about the same. Cool. Let's try it. Well, it turns out that he contacted me because he's using online jobs and he has people in the Philippines running the ads. So right now he's running my Facebook ads. Well, people in the Philippines on his team are running my Facebook ads, but he's also a marketer. And so he's giving us really good information on like, hey, you need to try doing this differently. Like, okay, let's try that, right? So that's been really helpful for us. Google ads, I had the same exact thing happen. I had someone running my Google ads in the Philippines on my team. Someone approached me and was like, hey, I can definitely do this better and save you a lot of money. Turns out he has people in the Philippines running the Google ads, and they did a much worse job because of him, not because of people in the Philippines, but because of him and his incentive structure at running the ads than my people were. So I brought it back in-house. Our ads are way more effective now than they were with him, this US guy running our ads, right? So what kind of skill level can you expect? I mean, I would definitely trust someone in the Philippines more to run my Google ads than I would someone in the US, right? And their cost is way less. So like a programmer, the first programmer I ever hired, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do really good work because I'm a programmer. It turns out he was probably the best programmer I've ever met, right? And I mean, I'd put him up against anybody in the world in his talent, like he's legit. And you can definitely find, we've hired people away from IBM. Like you're working as a programmer at IBM and I just found you on Online Jobs and, oh, you're only willing to work part-time for us? Cool, come work part-time for us. Hey, what if we want to hire you away from IBM? We're going to hire you full-time. And we're paying you more because they're paying poorly and whatever. So yeah, you can hire really, really high-end talent.
That's incredible. And I just think it's helpful for the listener to know that as well. You're not just finding somebody to manage your email. Like you are finding quality talent, and skills that you can get in the States. And like you said, probably even better a lot of the time. And so what about, I know this comes up as well. I know I've heard you talk about this on other interviews and whatnot. And I get this question as well. But obviously the trust security piece, and, you're giving them access to your email, you're giving them access potentially to, bank accounts or accounting or whatever it may be. Speak to the security piece, the trust piece.
Yeah. So back up. Don't give them access to your email and your bank account and all that stuff right away. Right. So my people do have access to those things. They have a couple of them have access to my personal email account. They have had access to my bank account. They have access to my PayPal account. The only thing they don't do is they don't pay themselves because then they would know how much each other made, right? That took me a while to get to that point. I had to learn, yeah, I can trust them. And then the more I did it, this has been, 18 years now, but the more I did it, the more I realized, oh yeah, as soon as I hire someone, I know I can trust this person because I've been through that really good interview process. And I know the culture of the Philippines and I know that I can trust them, but you shouldn't do that up front and get yourself, make yourself really, really scared, right? So give incremental access, give access to something. If you're going to hire a bookkeeper, well, it's really hard to not give access to QuickBooks, like they can't do their job without access. And so there has to be some level of trust there. Now, the Philippines, theft laws are really serious in the Philippines. And the government is really on board with online work. And so they have made digital theft, the punishments are double of normal theft. And the Philippines is a very authority respectful culture. They respect authority. So they know if I were to steal something here, that is super duper wrong. And then they would lose their job. And that job is like really, really critical to them. So I have seen cases of theft, but almost every single case, the employer tried to get them to do some work and then not pay them, and they're just trying to get paid. It's so rare to see a malicious case of theft. I mean, like, we've had over 500,000 employers, and the number of times I've seen theft, I could count on one hand, like just malicious theft for theft purposes. It's not realistic. Yeah, hey, you can use LastPass and share your passwords so they don't ever actually see the passwords. So it's easy to revoke their access. That's super reasonable. You can give limited access to most things where rather than making them an editor, you can make them a viewer or, whatever it is, you can give limited access. So, but at some point you do have to trust. And what I find is like, it's not any different than trusting someone in the US. They're on the different other side of the world and people have a problem with that, but it's different, it's foreign, they're all scammers or they're not, but that's what we think. So, but you have to try it. You have to try it and see, is this really what he says?
How do you see, using, this method of employing people and building our teams? How do you see that evolving, as technology advances or anything else?
Everyone's really concerned about AI right now. AI is going to take over the world, and we're not going to need. I have multiple people. I mean, I've had a lot of people ask me, is there even going to be a need for VAs anymore? I mean, yeah. If you're writing content like AI content, it's good. It's not helpful. Like original content still requires human creativity. There's still human interaction needed. Google has, for years and years and years, Google's been willing to run your Google ads for you. Their incentive structure in running those Google ads is not your incentive structure. Their incentive is to make money. And if you're having them do it, that means you have no clue if it works or not. You have no clue if it can be better. So yeah, like in AI, I don't let Google do anything for our ads. And we're way, way, way more effective doing it ourselves than letting them do anything. In fact, every time they contact us and say, oh, I'm your representative, I can help you, I say no, because every time we've ever let them help us, they make it worse every single time. So is there a need for this in the future? Yeah. I mean, as long as there's a need for humans, I'll be honest. I started this in 2005. I hired my first person in the Philippines. I have seen nothing change in that time in terms of need, except for demand has gone up. Demand has gone up and skill has gone up, right? So recently AI has come along and.
Yeah, no, it's good. What about even on the personal side? How do they help? Maybe some ideas outside of being the CEO, but what about, well, I don't know, with the family or scheduling a vacation or anything like that?
I sent one of my people, hey, look, I need some 9mm ammo. You have my credit card and my home address. I don't really care what you do. Don't spend more than $100, right? And 9mm ammo showed up at my house. I need to renew my passport. I don't know how. Will you tell me how to renew my passport? Sure, go to this link and fill out this form. Oh, I could have Googled that, but I didn't want to go through the rabbit hole of reading all the government web pages and whatever was coming with it, right? So this is a classic one. My WordPress website needs to be updated. I could do that, but if I don't find that setting in like 1 minute, that means I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. And this could be an hour. And I'm just not even going to attempt it. I'm just going to send an email and say, hey, here's what I want. Will you fix this? And maybe it takes them an hour. I don't really care, because that $6 an hour is not worth me thinking about it any more than the 20 seconds it takes to send the email, right? So I have that son who's in the Philippines. He's a missionary, and right now he's 21 years old. When he was 11, he wanted to start a business. And he was bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. Dad, 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 dad. So I could either discourage him from being an entrepreneur, or I could help him, right? And as he started, he has all this stuff going on, and it's like, dude, I have my own stuff, like I can't think about your stuff too. So I just give it to one of the guys in the Philippines. Hey, will you help him solve this? Like, don't solve it for him, but point him in the right direction, right? Figure what he's doing out, right? So this son, this was 11, 12. He sold $350,000 of stuff his senior year in high school, right? He made quite a bit more than his teachers made. And he had people in the Philippines helping him with it, right? So yeah, there's stuff all over the place. Once you do it, it's like this whole world opens up towards, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that, right? I don't have them plan our vacations because my wife and I like doing that piece.
Yeah, no, that was just an example. I bet you gave some great ones, just like thinking outside the box as far as you're trying to figure this thing out. It might take you an hour. Well, one of them's more qualified to do it all together, right?
Not even more qualified. Just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. My hour is worth so much more than their hour. Even if my time isn't really worth that much more, I want to spend that time with my kids.
The freedom's worth
that's
a
for
lot.
me. That's the end game. Is I want to spend that time with my wife and my kids, and not on a computer researching something that someone else could research for me and tell me what to do or do it for me.
What's the biggest challenge in your business right now?
The biggest challenge for us right now is we built Online Jobs in 2008, and it has been added on every single day since, and it's on a really old architecture, and we need to update it. And we've been working on it for a year to update it. And it's really hard. It's kind of like rebuilding it completely from the ground up, even though that I really, really didn't want to do that, but that's what it's like. And it's taking a long time, and it's really, really frustrating. Our focus is always helping employers to have a good experience. We want you to have a good experience in hiring someone. And so that's what we focus on right now. We can't add some things that we want for people to do because the architecture, the way it's built. So we're working on changing that so that we can add good stuff to make it easier for employers.
And I assume you have Filipino help with all of that.
Oh yeah, that's all done in the Philippines. Yeah.
What are some metrics that are most important to you? It could be personally or professionally.
The quote that has driven me for most of my life is, no other success compensates for failure at home. So for me, where am I spending my time? Is my time spent working, or is it spent with my kids and my wife, my family? So I don't have a metric for that, but that's really kind of what drives me, is I want to make sure that I succeed at home first. In the business, our metrics are number of monthly users, monthly active users. I want to see that going up every month. And it, for the most part, it goes up every month. November and December are slow. Nobody wants to hire someone new in November, December. But other than that, it goes up every month. So
I have never heard that quote, but that's right up my alley. I love that. Yeah, I also want to be famous at home, right? And more so than or in the dining room versus the boardroom. Right. Much more important. So I appreciate your focus on that in a big way. Any other habits that you're disciplined about that have produced a high return for you, whether it's in the business or even around, personal habits or around family or anything like that?
Yeah, I actually have a number. So I read my scriptures every day. I don't miss days of reading my scriptures. It's not always a lot. Some days it's just one verse, but that has given me, I cannot quantify the returns in the peace of mind of the knowledge I have gained. So that's one. I do yoga probably 5 days a week. I only do like 10 minutes, but it keeps me and my body feeling good. And so that's a really big habit. At work, my number one, this isn't a habit, but it's the thing that changes work for me, which is I think that's my job. I think if something is like menial work for me, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. And if I'm not doing it, that means someone else is doing it, or it's not getting done. because my most important time is spent thinking. So then along with that, when I'm sitting in front of the computer, I am super, super effective. There is no YouTube for me. I haven't seen that latest video. I don't have Instagram on my phone, Instagram or Facebook on my phone. So I don't spend time on social media. That habit of like eliminating distractions, it makes me, so I only work like 15 hours a week. That's how. And that's a really big deal.
Love that. The habit of eliminating distractions. Is there any resource or anything that's helped you to do that well? That's hard.
Probably the best thing was stopped reading the news years ago. I just stopped. And it's probably been 10 years. And I mean, I'm so much better off because of it. I mean, because I've learned more and more, again, given what I do, I've learned, oh, news is not news. It's entertainment. It's a business. Their job is to garner eyeballs. It doesn't matter if it's Fox News on one side and MSNBC on the other side. They're both making up crap because they have to get eyeballs, right? And so I stopped reading the news, and wow, what a difference in my life that made.
Yeah, for sure. Very few places to get factual news, and you have to be careful about that. And I love that. What about the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Thinking. That's it. What I talked about. I think and solve problems. The hardest of the hard work is the thinking work. Building a website, doing the research isn't hard. It's the thinking behind it. It's being willing to think to teach someone else to do this. Yep, it's going to take you longer to teach someone else to do it. That's the hard work. But that's the most valuable work. So yeah, I'm too busy to teach someone else to do. Oh yeah, you're right. You're too busy. You're always going to be too busy. And that's where I have excelled, is in saying, yeah, I'm going to do this hard work, and I'm going to spend the time to hire someone, even though I'm too busy to hire someone, knowing or hoping that in 3 months, that's going to make me less busy. And it has, over and over and over again. But that's hard. And thinking through, like, oh, I have to make the sale. How do I make the sale? What's the process to make sales? I have to do this and this. That's hard. But it's the thought work.
How do you like to give back?
So I have a number of things. I serve in the church quite a bit. I donate quite a bit of money. I ride my bike a lot. Like I mountain bike a lot, and I do trail work. I help coach my kids, the high school mountain bike team.
John, grateful for how you've given back to us today, and just diving into hiring specialists in the Philippines, and how we can really optimize our business and ultimately gain back more time, right? And more time we could spend thinking, like you're talking about. I love your focus on thinking and how that is the hard work. I could not agree with you more. And the listeners have heard stories of how it was when I had uninterrupted thinking time that a whole pivot was made in our business or in our family, or big decisions made with my wife and I, for the trajectory of our family or something, because of some uninterrupted thinking time. Right. And so I love your focus on that, and just saying, hey, this is the hard work, and how you focus on that and eliminating distraction. So grateful for that. John, how can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you, and how to start this process of hiring their first specialist?
Number one, go to ofsguide.com. OFS, Online Filipino Specialist Guide.com. So that will answer the rest of the questions you have about taxes and time zones and security and wages. And it's like a 5-minute read. From there, onevoa.com that I talked about will walk you through the process of finding someone great. I make posts on social media, but I don't do the posting. So that's probably not a great way. I mean, people in the Philippines do the posting for me. Really, the best thing is my newsletter. I put a lot of work into my newsletter. I send it 3 times a week. I get emails every single day from people telling me, yours is the only newsletter I read. And you can opt into that at johnjonas.com. And you can opt out at any time. It's super easy to unsubscribe. But that's a really good way.
Awesome. That's a wrap. John, that's the end of the show.